Today I'm showing you the second iteration of the Mini Dragon Warrior project, where I am making my own iterative version of Dragon Warrior, the classic Nintendo game. So let's get going. So today's iteration was kind of the next logical step. If you watch the previous video, we had our character, our hero, who can move around the screen, but the background was just a static image. And that was about all we could do. Now, in this version, the background is a tile map. Now, a tile map is basically a map where you have like an array of a bunch of numbers that correspond to little tiles. And this was how like Nintendo games and Super Nintendo games were often made, is you'd have these little tiny images that got stitched together like a quilt to make like background images, background maps, things like that. Very popular in role-playing games, especially when you had to make big maps, you didn't have that much memory. So this is how we're doing it. So today, what we've got is we have a tile map that is randomly generated. Now I can show you that real quick. Notice that this should change each time we run build tile map. So also if I close and start it again, you will see that the tile map is different. Now, you notice that the tile map is very much kind of a randomly generated outdoors kind of thing. Now, in the final version of the game, probably like you couldn't walk on the mountains, things like that. But in this version, again, we were just trying to get one piece of functionality. So that is what we did. Now, let's look at the code a little bit. Okay, so we're going to look at the tick method. This, as you may know from the previous one, happens about 60 times a second. It's where all the animation and stuff happens. So this is just getting called over and over again. Now on the first frame, it will build the tile map. So let's look at the build tile map. Tile map is an array. And what we do is basically it's a 15 by 27 array, or roughly the size of the screen real estate. And it will create a random tile basically between like 26 and 30 number wise. Now, why is that? Well, if you look over here, this is our tile map. I'll make it a little bigger. And this is the tile map that was ripped from the original game for the outside scenes. And basically what we're working with is these 4 tiles. So, we're skipping all of these because if I just did random tiles, you would end up with a scenario where basically the whole thing is going to look super weird. So to make it look more like an actual outdoor scene, I kept it to just these 4 tiles. Now, also in a final version, you would use something like a stored tile map where you handcraft the maps themselves. But again, that's not what we're doing in this iteration. We're just trying to make a tile map that works. So doing this randomly is actually a lot faster, or kind of like a lot simpler, just to prove that we've got a tile map that works. Okay, so all we're doing is we're looping through this tile map to create this array, this multi-dimensional array, and then we're just kind of adding that array to the state with just a tile map. Like, so we have this variable, the state variable. It's like a global variable in Dragon Ruby, and it's just going to hold our tile map for us. It's pretty easy. Nothing has really changed in the check keys. Movement is pretty much the same. What is different? So again, like the character animation, all that stuff is the same. Now, what is different is here in rendering the tile map. Now, first of all, in the original kind of iteration, I just had a handcrafted tile map, which you can just see here. It was smaller, it was handmade, and it was really just a proof of concept to say, hey, can I get this to render the way I want it to render? And that worked. Next up, we have, this is where we're actually iterating through and showing the tile map. Now, again, what we've got here is we are looking at the tile map, and we are using Ruby to iterate through it. Each one with a row and the row index. So basically, we've got our rows and we've got an index. So that'll give us like the vertical kind of things. And then we're iterating through each of those. And then that will actually give us the individual values, and we're getting the index of those. This becomes useful and important. Now, in terms of the code, we are looking at the x offset and y offset, because what we're doing is we're having to actually give a offset of where the which tile it is. So here in the thing that actually is outputting, so we're giving it a path to this file, and then we are actually giving it like the x and y value, and we're calculating that via the offsets and the values. So when you say like number 24, what we actually have to do is, we'll give you like another example, like 12. There are like 24 tiles, I believe, across. And so what we actually have to do is divide that and use the offsets and things to actually figure out which tile we're looking at, and then translate that into coordinates. So instead of saying like, okay, we're on like row 1, row 2, row 3, we have to say, okay, row 1, number, like number 8 is actually like over here, that kind of thing. So that's what this code ends up doing. And then what we're doing is we are looking at the column index and the row index, which is like the XY of the array itself, and we're translating that into screen coordinates. So that's how we know that at this position, draw this little box. At this position, draw this little box. And so in combination, you actually get a full screen thing. So it's like at sort of array position 0, 0, it's using this one. At array position 0, 1, it's using this one, and so on and so forth. And that is basically how we are generating the tile map and how we are displaying it to screen. So what you end up seeing is, if you look at, kind of show this here a little bit, that will actually show us, this is what the array that we're looking at. So essentially that array then gets outputted here, not as an array of numbers, but rather as these little sprites in the appropriate positions. But we actually have a full generated tile map that looks cool, looks like the original game with some interesting differences. And yeah, so that is iteration 2 of the mini Dragon Warrior project.